got Trey's Raw in the building. I got Treeb Talk sitting to my left. Treeb, it's always a pleasure to see you. I know I don't get a chance to see you very often, but when I do get a chance to see you, it's good. And our guest for today is Theo Lawson. He spent some time as the Washington State University beat reporter and is a beat reporter for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And shout out to Tree because he was the one that got this interview pulled together. And he told me, Trey, this is going to be our biggest interview yet. So with all that being said, Theo, we appreciate you for being on. How have you been doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good. If you guys, if I'm your biggest one yet, you guys must have a pretty low bar for your guests. But I'm glad to be on, and hopefully it is the biggest one yet.
Well, we will say you are our biggest guest yet, and that bar is pretty low. I will say Renee was our guest last week, who's my girlfriend, and
shout out to Renee.
Yeah, shout out to Renee. She ended up, I think she's front runner for guest of the year, which you are competing for, Theo, here on the Raw Interview.
Yeah, well, I don't think I can top your girlfriend. So, and if I do, I would be worried. Whatever she ends up saying back to you about that. So yeah. I would tread lightly there, and just tell her that she's the best guest you've had, and she's going to be the one to beat moving forward. So
do you have a lot of experience in topping other people's girlfriends though? Do you?
What was that?
Say it again.
Oh, you were saying like you were gonna top Trevin's girlfriend, and you weren't sure if you're going to be able to do that, and I was just asking if you had any other experience in topping other people's girlfriends.
No, I don't, and yeah, we talked before we came on about getting canceled, so I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'm gonna let you guys continue with the questioning here before I get myself in trouble.
I do apologize, Theo. We did talk before this thing got started that we couldn't get Theo canceled, and we joked and said, that's our goal here, and Trey comes out swinging in the first 30 seconds, trying to get Theo canceled. What a guy you are, Trey.
Yeah, no doubt. And some prerequisites here. We always have some B-roll going on in the background. And right now we have a Madden game, and for whatever reason they got Nick Chubb at number 94. They got a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns that's number 47. Madden is an awesome video game, so I just want to get that out of the way. I don't really know what's going on with that, but it is funny. So, Theo, we appreciate you for coming on. Give me a little bit of your background, how you got started into the sports media. Did you go to college, or did you kind of just grind, pay your dues like old Treeb did to my left?
Well, I would like to say that I did both. I did go to college, and I think I would also like to say that I grinded a little bit too. But yeah, so I grew up in Northern California, the Bay Area. Grew up around the Giants, the Niners, Oakland A's, the Raiders at the time, and so I became a pretty big sports fan. Just being in that area growing up, and always kind of knew that I wanted to do something in sports. And I think by the time I got to middle school, high school, I decided I probably wasn't going to be a pro baseball player, so I should probably shift my attention and try to find something else. And so entering my senior year of high school, I kind of thought that journalism would be a pretty cool thing to try. I always read the sports section of the newspaper back home in the Bay Area, so that was something that always kind of interested me, I guess. And so I enrolled in our journalism class. I guess it was kind of our student newspaper class. It was more of a little pamphlet that we put out once a week at the high school, but got a chance to be the sports editor of the pamphlet, and one thing kind of led to another, and ended up going to the University of Idaho for college and studied journalism for 5 years there. I joked that I took a redshirt year at Idaho and spent 5 years there, and eventually got out of there and started working at the Lewiston Tribune right after that. But had some cool opportunities in college to work for the Argonaut, the student paper there, and had a number of roles, working as a beat writer, blog manager, sports editor, and then my last year I got to be the editor-in-chief, so I had a lot of experience doing that at Idaho, and then had some cool internship, part-time opportunities working for the Tribune the last 2 years of college, and then between my last 2 years, my fourth and fifth years at Idaho, I got to intern at the Seattle Times over the summer, and got another pretty unique experience doing that. So always knew that I kind of wanted to do something in sports. Realized in high school that I saw myself doing journalism and kind of stuck with it. And surprisingly, I'm still doing it this many years later.
Yeah, no doubt that is an awesome backstory. So you mentioned, you grew up in Northern California and you went to the University of Idaho. How would you think, did you enjoy your time in the University of Idaho, and do you think you got a better education there than you would have had you went to school in your hometown of California?
Yeah, so I think I always knew that I wanted to leave home. I love my parents, and go back down whenever I can. Thankfully, with Gonzaga being the WCC, they play a lot of those Bay Area schools, so I get a lot of free trips home during the basketball season, which is nice. But I wanted to kind of break away from home and kind of do my own thing, and preferably go out of state. So I was looking at a few schools. I was really kind of choosing at the end between Arizona State and Idaho, and for some reason chose the school up north in the cold as opposed to the party school down there in the warm desert. So still wondering sometimes in December and January why I made that decision and didn't just go to ASU, but it worked out for the best, obviously. And like I said, just having the opportunities, I think mainly with the student newspaper, kind of helped me gain a lot of experience. And I took a lot of journalism classes, majored in journalism and mass media, but I really think most of my knowledge and experience came from working at the student paper and kind of getting the hands-on experience and doing a lot of the things that I would end up doing at the Tribune and at the Spokesman Review now. So I think that was the best opportunity that I could have had. And I think going to Idaho as opposed to a bigger school like ASU gave me, more chances to kind of step into some bigger roles with the student paper and the student magazine, the student media. ASU has a pretty competitive journalism program, and not to say that I couldn't have done the same things there, but I think I had a lot more opportunities right off the bat at Idaho, and I made the most of those, and it's still working out for me.
Yeah, Theo, going back to your college days where you kind of got the ball rolling, you got to work and contribute for a great college newspaper, the University of Idaho's Argonaut, which is historically just a great paper. Can you just talk to me about your experience there? And when you were there, I mean, you guys really had just the dream team over there for that class and really for your whole time there.
Yeah, I think we were like the 1992 Olympic team of student newspapers, if you want to call it the dream team. No, I'm just kidding. But we did have a lot of writers, photographers, editors who ended up sticking with journalism, working at local papers, national papers. Less of us are doing it now. I think a lot of people have kind of broken off and done their own thing and left the industry, which is common throughout the country now. But anyway, I think we had a pretty good staff back then, and a lot of people who really were invested in what they were doing, cared about the paper, cared about putting out the best product we could. And I think we had a lot of talented people who kind of came together. And I think that was my favorite part of working there, was kind of the tight-knit community family aspect of it. We all became good friends, and it was pretty common to send the newspaper on a Thursday and then go out to Mingle's Bar and Grill later that night, and just kind of get to know each other. And I think that really helped with bonding, and I think that made us probably a better newspaper. And we were able to win a handful of student journalism awards and whatnot. It was a great experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I still keep in touch with a lot of those people. There's one of them still working at the Spokesman with me. One of them was working at the Spokesman with me a couple of years ago. So it was a great opportunity.
And yeah, no doubt. So you mentioned when you were working at the newspaper, you'd go to a bar and grill, and being from Idaho, that's one thing. There's not a whole lot to do versus, I mean, granted, I don't know what town you grew up in, Northern California, but would you say that when you moved up here to Idaho, you liked the people and all that, or do you sometimes miss California and just the variety of different activities and stuff you could do over there?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the people in Idaho. I think I still remember when my mom and I we actually took a road trip up to Idaho from the Bay Area. Kind of, I think it might have been June, right after I graduated high school. I had already kind of decided I was coming up to Idaho for college, but we hadn't seen the campus, hadn't seen Moscow. So I figured it was probably a good time to go and see the school that I was going to be spending the next 4 to 5 years at. So we took a road trip up there, and everyone we met on campus was really nice. And I think that was the one thing we were struck by, is everyone there was authentic and genuine and nice. And not to say that there aren't nice Californians and people down there, but I think the average person in Moscow might be a little bit nicer, more genuine than the average person in the Bay Area. And it was a very comfortable town to be in, and really tight knit, and really kind of felt like a college town too, which I think I was kind of going for, and wanted to experience what it was like to be in a college town with a football program at the time was FBS, but now obviously in the Big Sky. But yeah, I think I wanted to go out of state and kind of experience something new, and I was really surprised by the people that I met up there, and everyone was nice, and it was a little bit of a culture shock to be in a small place like Moscow after spending the first 17 years of my life in the Bay Area and being around more people, I guess. And I remember I had a roommate my first couple of years in school. He was from a small town in Montana, Darby, Montana, and I remember talking to him about Moscow, and he thought Moscow was the big city, and I was like, "This is the smallest town I've ever been in." And so it was kind of a culture shock for me, but really a great place to be for 5 years, and ended up staying there obviously after college, and lived there for another 5 years before I moved to Spokane.
Yeah, going back into some, maybe some good Moscow stories. You mentioned Mingles. Obviously, there's another famous bar in Moscow, especially for Idaho and Idaho football fans, especially the Corner Club.
Yeah.
Very, very famous for Idaho fans, and I always thought that that you would make it just as a journalist as a whole if one of your cutouts got put into the Corner Club. Unfortunately, during my time as a beat reporter, at least maybe not yet. Maybe they will in the future, because I did cover 2 historic Idaho football seasons. They'll put something on there. But Theo, you do have a couple of clippings there at the Corner Club. Kind of talk to me. Do you have any good Corner Club stories, and how does it kind of feel to be a part of that historic landmark in Moscow?
Yeah, I think this is your second attempt to try to get me canceled, trying to get my Corner Club stories out of me. So, no, I'm joking. I had a lot of good times there, obviously, and it's a staple of Moscow. And yeah, going back to what you said about the articles on the table, I was fortunate to cover a team that won a bowl game. I don't know if it was as much of my stories that were worthy of being on the table as much as it was that team doing something pretty unlikely at the time, and winning a bowl game, and beating that team in the fashion they did that day, that Colorado State team. So I think it was more of what they did than what I did, but still pretty cool. Every time I go in there, I kind of expect the table to be changed, expect there to be like a new theme or new stories, and every time I'm there, it's like, oh no, they still have my article there. And so at one point, I want Idaho to continue to win games and go to the playoffs and win a national championship. But at the same time, if they don't, then they won't have any reason to replace my story on the table there. So it was pretty cool actually. Last year, it might have been 2 years ago now, that my parents came up to visit, and we went down to Moscow for an Idaho football game just to go watch with some of my friends up here in Spokane. And so we went down to the Corner Club after the game, and I think I'd mentioned to them before about the article on the table, and I got to show them, and they were taking pictures and stuff. So that was a pretty fun moment. But a lot of fun times at the Corner Club. A lot of ladies' nights on Thursdays, and after football games on Saturdays, and sometimes Mondays, Tuesdays as well. So it was always a good place to go and have a tub or multiple tubs, depending on the night. And whenever I go down, I try to go there. And it's only an hour and a half away from where I live now. I wish I was down any more often, but I really kind of savor the chance to go down there and spend time there when I can.
Parents sure are journalists' #1 fans, aren't they?
They really are. Yeah, my dad still reads the edition of the Spokesman Review. I tell him he can just read the stories online, but he's committed to reading the PDF online every morning. And so it's always nice when I get a text from him saying, "Oh, that was a great story on this Gonzaga player." And it's always nice that they're still reading their son's work, because at some point it might not be the case, and they might grow old of reading the Spokesman every morning. But it's pretty cool.
I remember my mom was like, she said, "I'm glad you got this promotion, but now I won't see your name in the paper," And I'm like, I think every
exactly.
journalist goes through that.
Yeah, speaking of, parents and mentorships, I do want to get into this question. So it is my understanding that Theo Lawson, was actually the guy that was your mentor for your senior project. And I wanted to ask you, Theo, when you first got approached by Trebe, what was kind of your first impressions? Did you think he was a go-getter, and kind of what was your initial impressions of him at first?
Yeah, I'll try to remember the story the best I can. I might leave out a few details, but if I remember right, I don't remember if it was my first, second, or third year at the Tribune. But I think Treff had emailed me and mentioned he was doing the senior project and needed some kind of job shadowing experience. If I'm not sure if that was the exact word that he used, but that was kind of the gist of what I think he needed. And I think he needed so many hours for his first project. And so he reached out and wanted to do some job shadowing and spend some time with me on the job. And so I think we went to an Idaho football game one of the days, and I think he came and sat with me during a desk shift another day. And I think, if I remember right, he was supposed to complete like a certain amount of hours, and I think we had only gotten like a third of the hours done.
Yes.
And I think it got to the point where I was like, well, I mean, if you want, you can hang out with me and sit around and watch me edit stories for another 2 or 3 days, but I could just sign off on your form and you could finish your project. And I think we ended up doing that. And
yeah,
I feel bad for not holding Trev accountable and making him complete his senior project, but it worked out, and now he's at the Tribune. So
yeah,
I'd like to think that I have at least some credit for that, and glad to see he's doing what he's doing.
yeah. No, I give Theo a lot of credit for not only my career but also my graduation. If it wasn't for Theo's,
2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah, if it wasn't getting 2 birds stoned at once, if you will. If it wasn't for Theo's John Hancock, I would not have graduated high school. So I do appreciate that, Theo. I do have a question here for you, and if you get this right in the later portion of the episode, I will give you 1 bonus point in the Trump the Trey game. This is on the slate. If you can tell me the game that we went to go see, or the final score, or who won, I will give you the extra bonus point.
Oh gosh, that's going to be tough. I'm definitely not going to get the final score because that would be near impossible. I don't think I'm going to get the opponent because that was probably 10 years ago now,
2017,
maybe longer than that. So, but if I remember right, it might have been my last year covering the beat, and they went to a bowl game that year, and so I'm just going to guess that Idaho won the game because they won most of their regular season games that year, and especially the ones in the Kibbe Dome. So I'm going to pass on the score, I'm going to pass on the opponent, and I'm just going to guess that they won.
Well, you are incorrect.
Actually. Oh, shoot.
Idaho played Troy, and they lost 34-13. Actually,
okay.
In the Kibbe Dome.
Troy had a pretty good team.
Yeah.
Those years, so not surprised.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to see if maybe you could pull a rabbit out of the hat, but I wasn't sure. I thought that would be a fun question.
Yeah, so, going back to your Washington State days, I do want to ask your opinion on Cam Ward. Cam Ward is actually the quarterback now for the for the Miami Hurricanes. And I just wanted to know, did you get a chance to talk with him at all when you were covering, or was that a little bit after your time? And what do you think he's going to be able to do with the Hurricanes this year?
Yeah. Cam was a little bit after my time, but I still kind of help out on the WSU beat because typically the seasons don't overlap until late October, early November. So typically I'll cover all the home games and write sidebars about the Cougs until Gonzaga starts up in October, November. So I have seen Cam play a handful of times, and I still try to watch all their games, whether it's in person or on TV. And I think I'll be at 4 or 5 of them this year to open the season. So I think it's a good move, positive move for him. And I think I saw he was the preseason ACC Player of the Year yesterday. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he does a lot of stuff that NFL teams are going to love. Obviously, his speed, his athleticism. He's big. He's got a strong arm. I think the one thing that kind of hurt him the last year or two was ball security, and a lot of that has to do with your offensive line. But at the same time, you got to be more careful when you are running around and making plays off schedule like he does. That's kind of his trademark, his gift, I guess you could say. But when you're going to do that, yeah, you have to make sure to take care of the ball. And I think there were a number of games, I don't know the stats exactly, where he turned it over 2 or 3 times just by scrambling, getting hit, not taking care of the ball. So I think that's going to be the one thing that, especially maybe in the ACC, if he's not doing that, it might be highlighted even more. And I think that'll be the one thing that NFL teams are a little wary of, but obviously he's got all the physical traits, and I think he's going to do well down there, and I assume he's going to have a few more playmakers at his disposal, and it seems like someone who, with a good season, could be a first-round draft pick, and I'm not sure how quarterback heavy this draft class is. I'm sure it's not as heavy as last year, so I think it's a good spot to be in for him, and I think he's going to have a good year down there probably.
Awesome. And going towards your time at Washington State, I mean, you were around during the Mike Leach era, and
yep.
That's a guy who I never got to interview, I never got to talk to. I've only ever got to hear secondhand stories from, and he was a guy that every story you hear from him is more interesting than the last. Every quote that he gives is more interesting than the last. The only coach that I could think of that comes close is maybe Ed Sheff for Lewis Clark State baseball. What was your experience with Mike Leach, and do you have any good Mike Leach stories or quotes that you could shed to light here on this podcast?
Yeah, there's one story that kind of sticks out that's not maybe as public as the rest, because obviously a lot of our interactions were post game press conferences, post practice interviews, and a lot of that stuff people ended up finding on YouTube, and obviously a lot of his clips went viral for the quirky non-football quotes and comments he would have after games and practices. So, but the one thing that stuck out, I think it might have been my first year covering the beat. I think I had reposted something on Twitter that was kind of critical of Leach's handling of media. I think it was an Oregonian columnist who had, written a column, and I think I reposted it and, basically said, yeah, I agree with everything that Ken's saying here. And all of it was pretty critical of Leach, and I figured, Leach isn't going to see it. He's not on Twitter. But later that day after practice, he, I think we finished up our post-game or post-practice interviews, and he pulled me aside and confronted me, and he said, I saw what you posted, and I don't care if you agree with me, and kind of really let me have it for about 5 minutes, and a lot of F-bombs in there mixed in. So that was intimidating, to say the least. And I think the one thing that stood out to me was him saying, do you want to be the type of journalist that goes and writes a great book, or are you going to sit on your couch and smoke weed all day? And I don't know if that was the exact quote, but it was pretty close to what he said. And I said, well, I don't really have a desire to write a book right now, but I'm also not going to sit on my couch and smoke weed. So maybe there's some middle ground there. But we talked it over, and I think we left the conversation in a better place than we started. And I think at the end of the conversation, he gave me his phone number and said, if there's anything you ever need, feel free to reach out. And I think after that we had a pretty good relationship, and it was it was a working relationship, and he was someone that I could text if I needed a quick phone call or a comment on something. And I remember when his defensive coordinator left midseason in 2019. I think it was during a bye week, and I had gone to the Seattle area for a wedding during the bye week, and this comes out on a Friday, the day before the wedding, and I'm driving out there and have to stop and write a story about the DC leaving. And the next morning I was on the way to the wedding, and Mike had agreed to talk with me for 5-10 minutes about why the DC ended up leaving. And I took the phone call from this random church in Washington, and wrote a quick story on my phone, sent it to the copy desk from my notes app, and we ran the story that day. So I think we ended up having a great relationship. When he left Washington State, I was still the beat writer, and texted him, I think the same night that he was hired at Mississippi State, and just said, hey Mike, thanks for everything, congrats on the new gig, wish you the best, and I'll see you down the road. And he responded right away and said, thanks, you did a great job covering our team, and appreciate your work, and best of luck. So I had a good experience covering him. I know there's probably some writers who didn't have the best experience, and he could be prickly at times, but that was something that you had to deal with. And I always tell people that you want to cover interesting people doing this job, and he was as interesting as you could get as far as a coach or an athlete goes, and so there was always stuff to write about, and I never lacked any content or clicks, that's for sure.
No, that's an awesome story, man, and thank you for sharing that. But that's also kind of a good situation to maybe kind of touch on there for young journalists and for Trey, who's kind of interested in the sports media world, and people that maybe want to get into that. For coaches that kind of confront you while you're just kind of doing your job, right? You didn't do anything wrong. You just stated your opinion and things like that. Could you maybe kind of give some advice as to, I mean, you kind of touched on what you did, but, maybe just in like a general sense, if somebody kind of comes up to you and questions you on the job that you're doing and how to handle yourself in a really stressful situation, especially when it's a guy like Mike Leach.
Yeah, I think there's a way to handle it, and I think there's there's a time where you have to stand by your opinion and your article, or in this case, the thing that I shared that really set him off wasn't probably worth retweeting, and I think I realized that later that evening or the next day, and I decided, was it really worth it to repost that? And I don't care that deeply enough about whatever this column was, that it wasn't worth potentially fracturing the relationship with the coach that I cover every day. Obviously, there are times when you have to be critical of a coach, and although a beat writer at a paper isn't a columnist, so you're not necessarily criticizing them on a weekly basis and critiquing every decision they make. You do have to analyze games, and that's kind of one of your jobs as a beat writer. So I think most athletes and coaches understand that. I think if they understand our job, they understand that we're going to write about the positive plays, but we also have to write about the negative plays. We have to ask them about their in-game decisions and stuff that happens during the course of a season, positive or negative. So I think with experience you kind of become more comfortable in those situations, and I think if you have a working relationship, a positive relationship with a coach or an athlete, I think they should understand your plight and what you're trying to do, and shouldn't take any offense, because whatever we're asking them is something that the fans want to know generally, and so it's more coming from, hey, we're the ones with access to the player, to the coach. We're the bridge between you guys and the fans. The fans want to know why you decided to run the ball on fourth down here instead of kick. So I think they understand that, but a situation like that one, I think you have to kind of stand your ground a little bit. There's always not going to be common ground there, so you have to, I think, get to a point where you're not fully apologizing, but I think you can meet in the middle a little bit, and typically the coaches aren't too concerned about what we do because they have greater things to worry about. So I don't think Mike Leach was going to spend a lot of time thinking about that tweet, and so I think he probably moved on pretty quickly, and I'm sure I moved on a lot slower from that than he did. So I think you have to realize that, and find some common ground sometimes, but I think they also kind of respect people who kind of stand up for themselves and own their work, and I think as an athlete or a coach, I think you can respect that.
Perfect. And then one more question for me on this issue, and then I'll let Trey go back to hosting his show. You mentioned that the beat reporter is not the columnist, and that's true in most senses. But you go to like the Tribune, where you worked as the Idaho guy, where you were the beat reporter and the columnist. And I've done that, and I think that's kind of the same thing for a lot of small papers. How do you think you walked that line as a beat reporter and a columnist? Because I'll tell you, I don't think I walked that line as nicely or as swiftly as I could have. I think I was a little bit more critical in my columns for somebody that covers that team every day, and I think I probably could have done a better job. And you were young in that position too. That was your first job. How were you able to do that? And you had to deal with a guy like Paul Petrino, who was way more critical, from my understanding, of reporters than a guy like Jason Eck. And even Jason Eck was a guy who got wound up from time to time.
Yeah. I think I was fortunate not to cover Idaho while Mason Petrino was the quarterback, because I think I would have probably got myself into trouble with my Monday morning quarterback columns if I had to write about his era.
Oh yeah, no, you were before Petrino, right? Or am I?
Yeah. So fortunately I covered more of a winning era. Where there wasn't as much turmoil, I guess, with the program when I was covering Idaho. But I will say that doing that Monday morning quarterback column was kind of the most uncomfortable thing that I had to do every week, and it was always the thing that I looked forward to doing the least, and it was part of the job, so I did it every week. But I can't ever remember an instance where I wrote something that really ruffled any feathers and I got any blowback. So I think now thinking about it, I think there was one column that I wrote criticizing the former Sunbelt Commissioner Carl Benson, who actually used to be a Pullman resident. So I think somehow my article found him. I think he ended up, I don't remember if he called me or emailed me or left me a voicemail, but he wasn't happy with my story. And so, if that's the one person that wasn't happy with what I was doing, then I was okay with that, because it wasn't going to be someone I had to see the next day at Idaho practice. So, that was an interesting position, because you do have to be kind of the columnist and the beat writer at the same time. And I don't really like the idea of doing that, but like you said, it's a smaller paper, and so you still need to have kind of that voice in the paper every week. And as the beat writer, you're the most qualified person to speak about the team and what's going on with the team, and voice your opinion and really give analysis. And so I think I probably took the route of giving analysis more than straight opinion, and tried to make it more of an analysis piece, I guess, and tried to refrain from taking direct shots at people, and kind of stooping down to that level. But again, you kind of have to do the job, and maybe I wasn't as critical as I could have been. And so I think you do have to walk a fine line, and again, like, hopefully the coaches and athletes you cover understand that this isn't personal. I don't really have an issue with Paul Petrino or this player or that player, but I have to write about their decision to kick a field goal or run the ball. That's part of the job. And if they don't understand that, I think it's kind of their problem, and you try to explain your job to them the best you can, and live with the results.
Yeah, no kidding. And I definitely did a worse job at you at walking that fine line. So go ahead.
Yeah, no doubt. So I mean, you guys and I actually got into Treve a little bit about this same question, but we're talking about the coaches and the athlete side of things, but what about the fans' perspective of things? Because the fans that are invested into you guys, the beat reporters, can also be just as critical as the coaches and the players. So from that perspective, has there ever been a time to where the fans are like, oh man, this guy isn't asking any good questions, he's holding the water, I guess, however that phrase goes. But did you get a lot of that as well from the fans for not being as hard as they thought you should be on them?
Yeah, I think I don't think I got much of that, negativity from the fans. I think people, were critical of some of the stuff that I wrote, or the way I went about the job sometimes. And I can't think of any specific examples. I think, I guess the one thing that kind of sticks out, this wasn't with Wazoo, but when I was covering Gonzaga, I broke the story about John Stockton being banned from home games at the Kennel for refusing to wear a mask. And so I got a lot of blowback on my story there. And, why would you write that? This isn't a story. And honestly, from both sides. So I think as a writer, you just have to get to a point where you ignore that. And I think I got to a point where I decided, hey, if my editors are happy with my work, if my bosses are happy, then that's really all I care about. They're the people who know what the job is, know me. I think, but it is easy, especially when you get more of a following. Like when I left the Tribune and started covering Wazoo for the Spokesman, I think within a day or two I gained 5,000, 6,000 followers on Twitter, and maybe not that many, but it was somewhere around there. And so I think you kind of feel this sense of responsibility, and it's easy to let those voices get to you and kind of affect your day-to-day life. And I think I tried to remind myself, and probably didn't do a good job in the early stages of doing this, that they're people who only know me for what I'm doing as the beat writer. They don't know me personally. They're people who've never met me. So I think it's easy to kind of internalize that, but I think with kind of experience you get better, and you just you learn to ignore stuff like that. And you do get some pretty nasty comments sometimes, nasty emails, nasty voicemails, but I think it's best to kind of ignore that and block it out if you can. And it's not easy, but it's something you learn to get better at.
How is that something that you perfected? Because I mean, I like obviously, like you said with the spokesman, you grew like substantially. But I mean, for me, for example, I went from bouncing around part timer, just doing high school jobs, to going to the Trib and being the beat writer for the Vandals, and I grew pretty substantially from just doing that. And there were some Vandal fans that would get mad at me, and I'd cover six. I'd do this job 7 days a week, and people would get mad at me, and I would have these I would be thinking about my job 24/7 as I'm going to sleep. And I'd try to get into that mode where it's like my editors think I'm doing a good job, like everybody in this office thinks I'm doing a good job, but it's hard to block out not only the fans' noise, but sometimes the coaches and things like that. Like, how did you perfect that? Are you still working on it? Where are you at with that?
Yeah, I think it's something that I'm always working toward, and I think with Gonzaga, maybe I don't get as much of the negative feedback because I think typically the fans here are pretty happy, and there's not a lot to complain about. So, although last season when they lost 3 of their first 8 games, the world was ending, and I had a few comments suggesting that they should, consider a new coach. And I'm like, really? I mean, you lost 3 games and you want to replace the guy who's built this dynasty?
Yeah.
And so I think there were a few points where you had people saying, oh, you need to ask Hugh about why he's playing this person or that person. And I think you just get pretty good at ignoring it. And again, it's like, these are, I try to look at them as, I know they're real people, but I try to look at them as, these aren't people in my life. They're not people that I should really pay much attention to and give much thought to. And if I'm letting their tweets affect my day-to-day life and livelihood, then I guess they're winning in some sense. So I think you get more experience. And like I said, I think when I first took over the Wazoo beat, I would get a lot of stuff like that, and I think I didn't probably handle it as well. And I didn't let it consume me, and it was easy to kind of burn out, just thinking about your job, thinking about what people thought of you, I guess. And I think it's something that you get better at with time and with experience, and I think you need some reps to improve, but I think it happened eventually for me.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think another thing too is the people that you guys cover, the athletes and the coaches, they probably deal with the same thing as far as tuning out the noise and having to deal with people. I don't want to say like you or Tree, but people in the media scene and the fans and all that. And I think it's best for everyone to do like what you said, to try to block everything out and all that.
Yeah.
So in saying that, we're talking about getting burnt out and stuff like that, and where you're at in your career, would you say that you're just as passionate as you were when you first started doing this, or do you think it's just kind of become your job per se?
Yeah, I think I still am passionate about it, and yeah, I think the first couple of years covering Wazoo, I think covering Wazoo as the single beat writer is a lot different than what I'm doing now. There's 2 of us who cover Gonzaga. There's myself, and then there's someone who's been doing this a lot longer than me. He's been around for around 15 years covering Gonzaga. So back in 2021, they decided that they wanted 2 beat writers, and so I got pulled from the Wazoo beat to help out with Gonzaga. So we're able to share a lot of the stories, and we kind of team up on stuff, so it's a lot easier to split stuff with another person. I mean, we're still writing stories most days, but whereas covering Wazoo, it was just me living in Pullman alone. It kind of felt like you're on an island, and you had coworkers, but you didn't know any of your coworkers because you were never in the office, and it was kind of a weird job to adjust to. I kind of liked that aspect of it, the isolation part of it, but then you get a little lonely, and it is really easy to burn out, especially because with football you're covering 3 weeks of fall camp to start the season, and that's 3 hours a day. And at the time they were practicing in Lewiston, and it was 95 degrees at Sacagawea junior high every day, and you're spending a lot of time watching the same stuff, and then once you're done, you're writing 1 to 2 stories every day about it. So it was easy to even burn out after 3 weeks of fall camp, and you felt like you were fried before the first game came. So I think I got better at managing my time, really trying to find ways to work ahead a little bit and give myself a few more breaks during the season. And thankfully, I worked for people who were understanding, and if I needed a day off, they were pretty good about giving me that. So I think my second and third years covering Wazoo were a lot easier than my first because I was more accustomed to kind of the rhythm of the season, and I was able to kind of pick my spots a little bit better. And I think it did help eventually to transition over and start covering Gonzaga, and I think I probably did that at the right time in my career too. So it's a little less hectic, less busy covering GU because there isn't the fall camp that you have to go to. We don't have access to practice, which is another issue that we could go into. But you're spending a lot less time watching the team, so it's easier to give yourself a little bit of a break, and it's easier to make it through a full season without burning out. So I think that's probably partially why I'm able to still enjoy the job and remain passionate about it, look forward to doing it every year, and kind of avoid the burnout that I had the first couple of years at Wazoo.
Yeah, no doubt. And I wanted to get into some Gonzaga talk here. So, me personally, I'm not the biggest basketball fan, but I do like March Madness. And I think I would be more invested into like baseball and basketball if it was like how the NFL does its postseason. I don't like when it's like, you best 5 out of 8 or best 6 out of 8. And I know the argument for that is, well, the better team usually wins. But, like when you do that, it's not like you have the New York Giants that come out of nowhere to beat Tom Brady and the undefeated Patriots. So I wanted to know what your take on that is, and what was your take on the Gonzaga season? They fell short to Purdue last year in March Madness.
Yeah.
So
Honestly, I think the Sweet 16 was about as good as that team could have done. Especially if you would have asked me after they lost, three early games, I would have, at that point, everyone was wondering, is this team going to continue their postseason streak and make the tournament again this year? Are they going to be a bubble team for the first time in a long time? And then especially after they lost to Santa Clara in conference play in January, that was kind of one of their first WCC games that really kind of looked bleak for their chances of getting an at-large bid to the tournament, and they really had to go on a run late in the year, and had a chance to beat Kentucky on the road at Rep Arena, and then beat St. Mary's in Moraga. So they had a few really good wins down the stretch that allowed them to make the tournament. But then, I think once they got to the tournament, winning 2 games, I think was a really good accomplishment for that team. And for Gonzaga fans, they're accustomed to making the Sweet 16, and for a lot of those fans, anything short of a national title now is not satisfactory, which is a pretty crazy when you think of where Gonzaga was 25 years ago. And if you would have said 25 years ago that fans were going to be upset with not winning a national title, it would have been pretty crazy to think about at that point in time. So I think people need to keep a little bit of perspective, and I think especially in this day and age, sports fans don't have a lot of perspective most of the time, and so it was a different season, and honestly, it was kind of a fun season to cover because you saw a team that's not used to going through adversity kind of go through adversity and face some real questions about whether they were going to make the tournament. And as nice as it is to cover a top 5 team from October until March every year, it's a little more fun as a beat writer to cover an interesting season, I think, sometimes, and kind of see a team go through ups and downs and make it through the end. But I think there was only one team in the country capable of beating Purdue last year, and that was UConn, and they did. Yeah. So I think once they got that matchup, you kind of felt like, this was a great season. If they somehow managed to beat Purdue, that would be a huge accomplishment. And I think we all thought it could happen, but we've seen that matchup twice already. They played in November at the tournament in Honolulu, and then they had played the year before in a Thanksgiving tournament in Portland. And so they had seen Zach Eat twice, and those 2 games didn't go very well, and I just kind of didn't have a lot of hope for the third game. But they were playing well at the time, and I thought it could happen. But I think that was kind of about as well as that team could have done. And so I think there were a lot of fans that were pretty happy with that finish, and just considering where they were to begin with. Once they get to March, Mark Few was so good at winning 1 game every game, and so I think he had them pretty prepared, and they got a nice a nice seed and had a good first round matchup with McNeese State, and then they played a Kansas team that was kind of wounded. So I think they had a pretty good draw, at least up until the Sweet 16.
Yeah, no doubt. And, talking about, like, I want to get, what are the expectations from Gonzaga going into next season, and also WSU football, what kind of their expectations? And also, by the way, you're talking about spoiled fans. I'm a New England Patriots fan, so I absolutely understand where you're coming from with that one.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Golden State Warriors fan who got pretty spoiled from the Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green team. So I know the feeling, and it's easy to set expectations really high, and then your team doesn't meet them, and it's disappointing. But I mean, if we're talking about this year's Gonzaga team, I mean, it's going to be one of the deeper teams that Mark Few's had, because I truly believe they have 10 to 12 guys who could start on almost every team in the conference, if not in the country. And I think I think it's going to be a fun exercise in the fall to look at their 6 through 10 guys and determine, like, could that team by itself win the WCC because they are that deep. Their top end guys. I mean, I don't think they have a guy who's a clear-cut lottery pick. I don't know if they have a first-round pick on this team, so they don't have kind of the top-end talent that a lot of the teams last year in the tournament had. And if you're looking at like a UConn or a Purdue, some of the teams that were playing late in the season, I don't know if they have the one guy that you're going to say he's a bona fide All-American, he's going to be a first-round draft pick, but they have probably 4 or 5 guys who are surefire first-team all-conference guys who could be All-American type players if they have a good year. And I think most polls I've seen have them as a top 5 preseason team in the country. So they're going to come into the year with those expectations, and it's going to be another year where fans expect them to get back to the Final Four, and anything short of that will be disappointing for fans. So I think there's going to be higher expectations with this team because it's a lot of returning players. They returned 6 of their 7 of their 8 rotation players from last year. They only lose Anton Watson, who is with the Celtics now. So they return everyone who played on a team that went to the Sweet 16, and then they bring in 2 or 3 really good transfers who I think can kind of fill spots that they're a little short at. So it's going to be an interesting year, and they have some pretty fun non-conference games that I think will give us a good indication early of where they're going to end up. And as for Wazoo, honestly, I'm probably the wrong person to ask at this point, because I haven't done my homework on the Cougs yet, and I'm not too familiar with their roster. But I just think it's going to be an interesting season following them. And I was going to say following them in the Mountain West, but they're not really even technically in the Mountain West. They're playing Mountain West teams, so I think it's going to be interesting to see if they can kind of stay at the level that they've been in the Pac-12. And I think they'll have a solid team. I'm a little curious to see what happens with their quarterback competition, and I think they have a pretty solid quarterback if John Mateer is the guy starting this year. And I'm not really too caught up with their skill guys and kind of what they have around Mateer, but I know that they need to definitely improve on the offensive line if they have any chance of making a bowl game, I think. And but on the surface, I think it seems like a team that could probably win 6 games at least and get back to a bowl game.
Yeah, no doubt. And, talking about college football, I did kind of have to ask you, what are your thoughts on, Colorado and what they've been able to do? Obviously, you got Coach Prime, who's a pretty polarizing figure in that space. And, they got to play WSU last year, I believe. And, what is your opinion of, because they've caused a lot of controversy and all that. So, what is kind of your, take on all the drama that they get into?
Yeah, I think they've been a great story for college football for sure. They built a lot of hype before the season last year, and then I think that TCU win to start the season only kind of skyrocketed expectations for them. And then we kind of saw what happened once they started playing quality teams, and TCU turned out to be a pretty poor team. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do this year, and I think this year will kind of determine a lot about what they have moving forward, and whether they think that Deion Sanders is kind of a viable option there. Because if they don't win at least 6 games this year, they're going to lose Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter. They're going to lose their 2 best players, who are 2 of the best players at their positions in the country. And so it's kind of hard to imagine that they're going to be better 2 years from now, next year, than they are this year. And so I think they really have to take a step forward this year. And he's had a year to recruit his guys and get guys from the transfer portal. And yeah, I think it was a pretty disappointing season last year, especially after that hot start. And I had a chance to cover that game in Pullman against the Cougs, and it just kind of looked like a team that maybe had given up a little bit. And at that point of the year, they kind of knew where they were, and they weren't going to reach their whatever goals they had. I don't know if they really thought they could win the Pac-12 last year, but it's kind of a team that felt like they gave up down the stretch and knew they didn't have what it takes to get to a bowl game and win a Pac-12 championship. So I think the Big 12 will be a little bit easier for them this year. I'm not too sure who else in the conference is really looking competitive, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. And I think they have a few really nice pieces, especially at the skill positions, but it was pretty clear last year they couldn't really hang on the offensive line, defensive line. So hopefully they've kind of recruited a few of those spots and can kind of load up there. And I think if they can play well up front, then I think they're going to have a decent season.
Yeah, and like since you said you got to cover it, did you get a chance to meet Coach Prime at all, or any of their boys, or no? Just curious.
Yeah, I had a chance to drop into their press conference after the game. So like I said, I kind of help out with Wazoo. So our beat writer Greg Woods is typically going down to the WC press conference, and I think we always kind of decide during the game that maybe it's worth one of us going to the visiting press conference. So I got to go down and kind of sit in on the Coach Prime interview, asked a question or two, and he was in pretty low spirits. I think he was also really sick that game too, so he wasn't really thrilled to talk to anyone, I think, after the game. But yeah, just kind of a shocking result, just considering all the talent, all the hype they had coming in. And this wasn't a great Wazoo team, but it just felt like a Colorado team that got up to Pullman, Washington, and decided, hey, it's pretty cold here, and we don't really want to be here, and our coach is sick, and I don't know if this is going to happen tonight. And I think you could tell pretty early on that the Cougs were going to dominate that game.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I just want to get you just a couple quick hits here before we get to our closing statement here. You've been able to do a lot of cool stuff, man. This Theo Lawson character, he's been able to cover a lot of cool things. He's been able to do a lot of cool things. I mean, why don't you just, touch on some cool things that you've done, mostly just for the viewers and for Trey. Trey, like, I mean, he popped for the fact that you got to interview Deion Sanders. So, I mean, and that's like surface level for Theo Lawson. so talk about some cool stuff you've done, man.
He's like, Coach Prime, that ain't nothing. I talk to him all the time.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say a couple weeks ago, I one of the more recent cooler things that I've done, and again, I certainly don't lose perspective of the opportunities that I've had, and although I think I've worked for a lot of this stuff, I think it's still. Yeah, so sometimes you have to sit back and kind of realize what you're doing, and there's not a lot of people that get to do what I do, so it is pretty cool, and I never take it for granted for sure. But a couple weeks ago, I was in Las Vegas covering the USA Olympic training camp, and that was one of the cooler opportunities I've had, and getting to see some of those guys up close and personal, and I've seen a few of them before. Like I said, I'm a Warriors fan, so I've been to a few Golden State games, and I've been credentialed for a few of those games, mainly to do stuff with Klay Thompson, because obviously the Coug connection back then when I was covering the Cougs, everyone wanted to hear from Klay. So, but just seeing LeBron James in person was something that I kind of didn't expect to hit me the way it did. There's just kind of an aura around him that you don't really get from other players, and he's somehow bigger than you would think in person. So that was a really neat opportunity, and some of the people I got to talk to down there, I was down there obviously covering Mark Few. He's an assistant with that USA team in Paris, and so my goal was to try to talk to like as many people as I could about Mark, and just try to get some of these kind of high up USA basketball people to give me their opinions on why Mark Few is a valuable asset for USA basketball and what they like about him, and any thoughts they have on what he's done at Gonzaga the last 20 years. So I had a chance to talk to some pretty cool people down there: Steve Kerr and Eric Spoelstra, Ty Lue, all on the USA staff, and then Grant Hill, who's the basically the general manager of USA Basketball. I had a chance to ask him a couple questions. So doing stuff like that was pretty neat. I think if we're going back to my days as a Wazoo beat writer, covering the 2018 Cougar season with Gardner Minshew was probably the best. My favorite full season I've covered of any team that I've covered as a beat writer. kind of getting to know Gardner before he blew up. I still remember before that fall camp in 2018. I don't think anyone was really anticipating he would be the starting quarterback in Pullman. No one really knew anything about him. He's this guy from East Carolina. He hasn't really done a whole lot. It kind of makes sense that they're bringing in a transfer, but I don't think anyone was sure he was going to be the guy. But I did a story with a few of his family members. I called his mom and dad before fall camp and got a chance to talk to his junior college coach and his high school coach and one of his best friends from back in Mississippi. So I was able to really get like a lot of good content about Gardner before fall camp, and obviously those relationships were pretty helpful moving forward because he blew up and became a Heisman Trophy candidate and did a lot of things that people I don't think ever would have expected he could do. So I think it was pretty cool to lay that foundation with people in his life, and him and his dad and myself, we still follow each other on Instagram. And when I got the Gonzaga beat writer job, he reached out and sent me a message and said congratulations. So I think that was pretty neat, having a chance to kind of build some of those relationships. And actually, when Mike Leach passed away a couple of years ago, I was trying to do a story on kind of his quarterbacks and talking to each of his quarterbacks about the influence he had on them. And so, I reached out to Gardner and sent him a text, and he was more than willing to talk with me and gave me a great interview. And, this was also obviously at a point in his career where he was, I don't know if he was starting in the NFL at that point, but he's a busy guy in the middle of an NFL season, and obviously took some time out to talk with me about his college coach. So I think that was a pretty memorable season to cover, and really kind of seeing his journey unfold the way it has been pretty neat too.
And real quick, do you expect Gardner to be the starter over in Las Vegas this year? Because the Raiders are actually one of my sleeper teams. I have them actually surprising people over in the West, and they also did a little bit of trolling of Patrick Mahomes with the whole Kermit the Frog thing that I've seen in a training camp.
Yeah, I don't know if that was too wise to do that, but at least it was I think it wasn't like a 7th round draft pick doing that. I think it would be more concerning if it was Max Crosby doing that.
Yeah.
You would have a few more questions about the leadership on that team, but yeah, I think I don't really know much about the quarterback race. I don't know much about Aiden O'Connell, but I think just from what I've seen in Gardner's career, I mean, he's able to take over any team that he's on and lead guys, and I think that's the one thing that helped him at Wazoo is like his ability to just relate to everyone and come in and instantly be a leader for a team that had lost their starting quarterback, Luke Falk the year before, and then obviously Tyler Helinski was going to be their starting quarterback before his death. And so I think he just has like a kind of an innate ability to lead people, and I think he's probably doing that right now in Vegas, and I wouldn't be surprised if that alone, allows him to kind of win the job. And from what I've seen in Aiden O'Connell, I don't think he's doing anything that's leaps and bounds better than Gardner. So I think you might as well go with the experienced guy, unless you want to take the high upside guy potentially who hasn't had a lot of experience and see what that does for you. But I'm not sure what's going on with the competition. I was at a wedding in Seattle earlier this summer that the Athletics Raiders beat writer happened to be at, and I was asking him, and he seemed to think that O'Connell was going to win the job, but that was obviously a couple months ago. I don't know if anything's changed, but hopefully I'm always pulling for Gardner to win every job, so hopefully he does. And I have a few friends who are Raider fans. Obviously, growing up in the Bay, I knew a lot of Raider fans, and my brother's a Raiders fan, and my best friend up in Spokane is a Raiders fan. So I somehow end up following the Raiders more than I think I ever will, and so hopefully he gets that job. We'll see.
Yeah, and then just 2 more quick questions for you, Theo, before again we get to the marquee segment. You are already in line for Guest of the Year. These answers have been awesome. We won't tell Renee. We won't tell Renee. She won't.
We won't tell her, man.
Yeah, we won't tell her. But I would love to say, I just want to say, you're one of my favorite sports writers, and I'm not just saying that because you're like one of my mentors and things like that. I do read a lot of your stuff, and you're a great sports writer. You've been working for the Spokesman now for a lot of years, and even though your best sports story you ever wrote was how a kid named Trevin Pixley got a winning pin in a Lewis and Clarkson wrestling duel, You know, even though that's your best story ever, and you haven't lived up
was
to
a
that
good
hype
one.
just yet.
Yeah.
You know, you haven't lived up to that hype just yet. But even though that's your best story, I still like your stuff. You know, what is your goal in sports writing? You know, do you kind of envision yourself being here at the Spokesman long term? Because I mean, you're covering a basketball program that is one of the best in the country. You know, you can't knock that. That's one of the premier gigs that you can have. You know, do you envision yourself going somewhere else? You know, do you want to stay planted? What is your goal here in this industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's something I think about quite a bit. Right now, I am very content with my job at the Spokesman and with covering Gonzaga. Like you mentioned, it's a relevant program every year in college basketball, and they're the pro team in Spokane. I mean, people treat them like the New York Yankees and Dallas Cowboys here. So they sell out every home game. All the games are really fun to cover, road and away. The traveling aspect is something that I really love about this job, and getting to see some of the cooler arenas in the country. Like I mentioned last year, going to Rep Arena to see Kentucky. This year, I have a chance to go to Madison Square Garden to see UConn, and some of those opportunities have been really cool. And I don't think I think if I was doing this for another 20 years, I don't think that stuff would ever get old for me. So I really enjoy doing that, and obviously the paper invests a lot of money in Gonzaga coverage, so it's a place where I think they really support me in terms of just allowing two beat writers to travel with the team and cover the team full time. So this is obviously a point in journalism where a lot of papers are cutting back, and so I think the fact that we're still sending people on the road to cover games and pouring our resources into Gonzaga coverage, I know that if I went somewhere else, it might not be the case. So I'm pretty content right now. I think I've always thought about how cool it would be to go back home to the Bay Area and cover the Giants or the 49ers or one of those teams that I grew up rooting for and reading about in the local paper. So that's something that's always in the back of my mind, and I'm always open to kind of different opportunities, and have been interested in some jobs here and there. But right now I'm pretty happy here, and I try to kind of stay day to day and not look at the long term picture. But we'll see. I'm not going to ever rule anything out. But again, like I said, I have a pretty good situation here. I've really kind of grown to love Spokane too. I actually just moved into a new place up here, so not really looking to move again in the next year, probably at least. And I like it up here right now. And it's also really nice to kind of have an off season where I'm able to travel and kind of do some stuff on my own. And I do get to cover NBA Summer League every year, which has become kind of a highlight of my summer, and get a chance to do some pretty cool stuff down there in Vegas every year. So I really kind of like the job here, and not really looking to move. But again, if something came up that I couldn't pass up, I would obviously look at it, and trying to keep options open. But I like the Spokesman, and it's a good place to be.
I mean, just not moving is probably reason enough to not want to get another job, right?
Yeah, I moved more furniture over the last month and a half than I can tell you about, and I have no interest in renting a U-Haul again, or
no.
And I moved about 3 miles away, and it was still a full month process between cleaning my old place, moving into this place, and I was trying to get everything done before I went to Vegas and have a few other trips planned this summer. So I was trying to get everything done, and the place looks pretty good right now, so pretty happy with it. But again, like I said, it was a lot of boxes and furniture, and it was just a kind of a nightmare, honestly.
I hate moving, dude. Moving is like the bane of my existence. I've done it so much for only being the age that I am, only being 25. I've done it probably like 6 times in my life.
Yeah.
It's been too much, but I mean, you're kind of if you stick around at the Spokesman, there's some good sports writers that have stuck around at their original place for a long time. Dale Grummert comes to mind.
Yeah, Dale, one of my mentors. Yep.
Yeah, that's a great mentor to have, man. That's a great mentor to have. He was a little quiet during my day and age, and when I kind of came into my own, he was out of sports. So not a guy that mentored me too much. But I also have a last question before we get into this game. A pretty non-serious question, but I would like to hear the story. This is from one of our most loyal viewers, one of our biggest subscribers. His name is Matt Bainey. Maybe you've heard of
Shout
him.
out to Matt Bainey.
Yeah. He wants you to tell the story about how you made a Nerf basketball shot from outside the Tribune office.
Oh my gosh, did I do that?
Yeah, you don't even remember it,
I
huh?
remember shooting a lot of Nerf basketballs after Friday night shifts, while usually having a beer in my hand.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm allowed to say that. I think that's probably okay, but making one from outside the office. Was that the story?
Yeah, I told him I was having you on, and I said, "Do you have anything that you want me to ask?" And he said, "Ask him about the time that he made a Nerf basketball shot from outside the office." He said you guys opened the window, and it took you guys like 2 hours to make it. He said.
Are you sure it wasn't?
He might. I mean, there's a chance he's confusing that with someone else, but it might have happened. I mean, I'm a pretty good shooter, if I don't say so myself.
I was gonna
recently went 1 and 2 at Spokane Hoop Fest up here, so yeah, one win at Hoop Fest is a good weekend for me. So I don't remember that, but I do remember we would play Nerf basketball, and this was a funny story because. We used to cover, obviously Rob Akey was the coach at Idaho for a while, and his son Jack Akey was a Moscow High football player, and his Twitter handle was Lights Out Jack, like Lights Out Jack Akey. And so we created this shot where we would turn all the lights off in the office, and it would be like the Lights Out Jack shot. And so that was kind of like our trick shot that we would do. That's the one thing I remember about the Nerf basketball games, but it did get pretty intense and pretty it was real basketball in there after some of those shifts, and it got pretty sweaty at 1 a.m. in the Trib office, and so that's what I remember. I mean, if Matt says that I made a shot from outside the office, then sounds good to me, and maybe I made a shot from Clarkson too. Who knows?
1 a.m. at the Tribune is the best time at the Tribune.
I was gonna say
even better than 1 a.m. is 4 a.m. and that usually only happens at the World Series party every year. So 4 a.m. on the roof of the Tribune, there's not a lot of better places to be, and that's why I try to come back when I can to help out with the series. I didn't make it down this year, but it's a unique aspect of the Tribune, and something that I always look forward to doing.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Trey.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, was Matt Barney confused with watching a Dude Perfect video by chance? Because that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, maybe he was watching Dude Perfect, and I can't comprehend half the stuff they do. So honestly, I'm not a very good shooter, and I can't imagine that I ever shot basketball from outside the office. But yeah, we'll go with it.
And Matt Bainey, who listens to all these podcasts, by the way, he's a big fan of you, Trey. And the fact that you called him Matt Barney, he's gonna get a kick out of that.
Bainey.
Did I call him?
No. Trey did.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I don't think I've ever done that, so I hope. I hope not. But shout out to Matt. I mean, if he listens to this, he was a great influence, and really credit him for helping me start.
Yeah, and then I know I keep saying before we get into this, but dude, like I said, you're good with these answers. Pick a party at the Tribune that's your favorite: Australian Open or the World Series.
Oh boy. Pick a specific year, or
just which party is your favorite: the Australian Open party or the World Series?
Oh, definitely the World Series party.
Yeah.
I mean the Aussie Open party was always fun. Yeah. Especially when Cody Wint brought his brothers, which I think maybe still happens. But
yeah, it still does. Yeah.
That was always pretty entertaining. But I think the World Series party was something I always look forward to for a couple of weeks before it happened every year, because I think mainly because you would spend 2 weeks writing about this tournament, and it was just endless stories and pagination, and I mean you're putting out basically 2 sections every day, and it was just kind of like tireless work for 2 weeks. And so I think everyone was always happy to drink afterward and celebrate, but I think everyone was also pretty happy that it was over, and it was kind of like the last I kind of remember it as like the last big thing we would cover at the end of the high school season, college season, and that was kind of the last thing you'd cover before you really got to summer, and things kind of slowed down on the sports desk. So I think the World Series party by far, and getting to go on the roof and perhaps toss one or two things off of the roof.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say that might be the thing that gets me canceled, but there were a few chairs that made it up there. I think the year before I came, there was a TV that made it up there that
that's
ended up
legendary.
on the ground, and maybe some beer bottles. I think we tried to throw some beer bottles into some chimneys, and again, I probably should stop talking right now. But if you want to cut that, you can. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I think that was always fun. And then I think you would get to 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and you're like, yeah, we should probably go home, but let's get breakfast first. So we'd always get breakfast somewhere in Lewiston. I think it ended up kind of being that place right down the road the last couple of years I was there. But yeah, that was always a great time, and I think it was pretty fun just to kind of sit around the table and kind of reminisce on the series. And the LCSC radio guy would always be there, and he was always pretty entertaining. Brian Danner, I think, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I always loved those parties, and again, that's why I love coming back and helping at the Tribune, but it's part of the reason that I still try to come down and help out during the series.
Do you miss that kind of work? Like you were the Idaho beat writer, like how I was, but you'd also cover high school football. You do the roundup. Like, do you miss that kind of work, or do you like what you're doing now more?
I don't miss doing the roundup. I don't miss doing that. I don't miss putting the TV schedule together.
Yeah.
But there was something really fun about covering high school sports that that you don't really get with even what I'm doing now. I think covering like 8-man football in these small towns was something that I never could have imagined doing when I was growing up in California, and just kind of the passion that people have in the small towns for high school sports is always pretty unique. And I remember covering baseball games in Orofino, kind of the background there with the river, and that was always a fun place to go. And then I would post up at the hotel. I think it was I can't remember what the hotel was, but like the Best Western, and they would always have cookies and coffee. So I would, write my story on their little patio next to the river with cookies and coffee, and then drive back to the office. So doing stuff like that was always fun. Covering the 2A state tournament, basketball tournament, and Yakima every year was fun. And I happened to cover 4 straight Pullman and Clarkson state titles, which is pretty unique. So I got to see some pretty good Pullman and Clarkson basketball teams. And yeah, there's definitely something about covering high school sports that I think that you only get doing that. And there's kind of like a rush after the game when you're trying to get back to the office to file your story, and you're compiling your own stats, and so it's definitely different than what I'm doing now, and I love what I'm doing now and wouldn't trade it. But yeah, I love the Tribune, and also the other part of it that I loved was being in a newsroom and interacting with people.
Yeah.
I pretty much work remotely these days, and going to the office maybe once a month, and so you don't really get to know your coworkers quite as well. And so I miss that aspect of it, and it was kind of more of a community newspaper, and you got to know your coworkers and kind of built relationships in the newsroom, and look forward to seeing people every day. And now I'm kind of a lone ranger here, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah. No, you hit the nail on the head with that, though. It is addicting, like the deadline work when you have to like compile your own stats on a Friday night. Game gets over at 10:30. You have to type up your own stats and like do a story.
Yeah.
Like, I love doing that.
I still remember covering a World Series game that I think got delayed like 5 different times by the lightning. I'm sure it was lightning, or I don't think they delayed it because of rain, but I think it got delayed 4 or 5 times, and the game finished at like 2 a.m, and obviously the paper was already out by the time the game finished. So I still wrote a story, and I think the next day Matt was like, "Hey, you don't have to come down to Lewiston for games today, but just write a column about what it was like to cover a series game at 2 a.m." And I think I remember I think there was a team. It was a team from Florida. I don't know who it was that year. It might have been like St. Thomas, but I'm not sure, but I think their radio guy was like greeting people who had woken up in Florida because it was like 5 a.m. in Florida, 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in Florida when the game was finishing. So people were waking up listening to the broadcast of the game still going on in Lewiston, and that was pretty unique.
I know, dude. It's hard not to get romantic about those small journalism jobs, man.
Yeah, for sure.
It really is. Like I mean, you look at like honestly, kind of like what Theo's doing. Like I mean, that's big, like not, big boy work. Like you gotta, and he's working every day and stuff. But I mean, like being in the trenches at the Tribune, like you're working your ass off like just as much as those people, and then like you're with a community, you're with the sports staff. Like I mean, it's hard not to get like those are memories you're gonna cherish forever, right, Theo?
Yeah, and I always tell people that I think young people in journalism who want to break into the industry, I think they need a job like that before they do what I'm doing or do something beyond what I'm doing, because I think it really kind of gives you like an appreciation for the grind and the hustle that it takes to do some of this work. And I think everyone should do it before they get to covering a college team full time or a pro team. I think it just gives you kind of more appreciation and kind of a better understanding of how journalism works, newspapers work, and at the Tribune, obviously, you're doing a lot more than just writing. You're designing pages, especially during the summer when people are on vacation, and you're proofreading, and you're taking phone calls from high school coaches, and so you're doing a lot more than I'm doing now. And so I think I really appreciated that work. And at the time, maybe it was a little tedious and you didn't love it, and you're always thinking, oh, I wish I could just go cover Gonzaga full time.
Yeah.
But I think now, looking back, I definitely appreciate that opportunity and doing some stuff that was pretty unique to that paper. And there's obviously a lot of papers like that around the country, and I think most great writers came from a paper like that at some point and had to start doing that kind of work before they got to where they are now.
Yeah.
You gotta pay your dues.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
And I will say too, if you're a young journalist breaking into the industry, don't just do a job where you're the only guy. I did that in Sandpoint, hated it. Don't do that.
Yeah, we need to get more into Treeb Sandpoint stories sometime.
Yeah,
too.
We need to do that's a separate podcast.
That's a different podcast, yeah.
All right. Well, this deep into the podcast, Theo, thank you for sticking around, man. Thanks for giving us such great answers, but you have not attempted to trump the Trey. Bam, 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 bam.
You're fired.
Yeah, we still haven't invested in a soundboard, Theo. We've been talking about it for weeks.
I think it's better the way you're doing it, so I think you should keep it that way. It's more gritty that way.
Thank you. Yeah. That's kind of the tone we're trying to give this podcast is gritty. Really, But anyway, guys, Theo, so this is the 5th podcast that we are doing, and Trey has been trumped 4 times.
But who's counting?
So the thing is if you do not trump the Trey, you and Evan Witherspoon will be in rare company.
Shout out to Evan.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. And today's topics, I made them easy. Today's topics are the 49ers.
Oh, gosh.
And the Patriots.
Okay.
All right. So we're kicking things off with the 49ers. That is
We're going to get some Jimmy Garoppolo questions, I bet. Crossover.
There you go.
How tall is Jimmy Garoppolo? I'm just kidding. Name the first question, guys. And you're familiar with the Stump the Schwab style, Theo, right? We got this before the podcast.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I don't exactly remember how it goes, but I'm sure I'll get the hang of it.
All right. So you guys, and there's a 5-second time limit to answer these questions. You have to name 49ers players that are in the NFL Hall of Fame until somebody gives up. Trey, start with you.
Joe Montana.
Theo, on to you.
Jerry Rice.
Trey.
Roger Craig.
Yep.
Terrell Owens?
I think he got in this year. Yes, he did. Last year.
Yeah, okay.
Trey.
Ronnie Lott.
Yes.
Oh, boy. I've got a newspaper clipping here in my room on the wall that could help me out here. Is that cheating?
No, you got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Steve Young.
Correct. Trey.
Can it be like people who are retired but they're gonna be like first ballot?
No, they got to be in the Hall of Fame. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Theo, you get the point.
I was gonna say Richard Sherman.
I was pretty lucky there. My Niners history isn't as good as my current knowledge of the team. So
Richard Sherman's gonna be a first ballot though, you would think, but maybe.
Yeah.
First ballot, probably.
Yeah.
All right. The 49ers have been to an NFL high 19 NFC championship games. Name quarterbacks who have started in those games until someone gives up.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Good.
Brock Purdy.
Montana.
Yep.
Steve Young.
God. I know I'm wrong, but I'm just gonna say Jeff Garcia.
Correct. Dude, where did you go with Jeff Garcia?
The only reason I know of Jeff Garcia was I think he was on a different team, but it was the Giants in 2002. That whole Trey Junkin mishap. They were playing the 49ers.
I know, but he went with Jeff Garcia over Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick.
That's a good.
Was he right there? Was he
you
right
know me.
Garcia?
I only remember the weird ones.
Jeff Garcia was not right. No.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I still do have his jersey, so.
Oh, do you?
Counts for something. I do. Yeah.
That's sick. All right, 2-0.
And actually, I have an Alex Smith signed football right here that I'm looking at. It says Theo, best wishes.
Oh,
so,
did you have cancer at some point?
I was gonna say, did you pretend to be a Make-A-Wish person?
I don't even know how I ended up with this football, but I think it's probably the real Alex Smith. Who knows? Could just be some guy named Alex Smith. I'm sure there's a million of them. So
That is true. All right, third question here. Name 49ers stat leaders. I'm gonna name them individually. So I'm gonna go back and forth with you guys.
All right.
Okay, Trey, you got passing.
Has to be Montana, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Theo, who is the Niners rushing leader?
all-time rushing leader.
Yeah.
And give Christian a couple more years and he'll be there. But
5, 4, 3, 2.
Yeah, I've got nothing for you.
What? Really?
Is it? Can I guess?
Yeah.
Frank Gore.
Yeah, it is Frank Gore. You didn't get
Frank Gore. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
University of Miami legend.
Why are you such a Miami guy all of a sudden? When did you become a Miami guy?
Cam Ward, Frank Gore.
Yeah, I know. He pulled that, like, I don't even know how you knew Cam Ward went to Miami.
And even though I lose, this is why you have the Stump the Schwab. It should be Stump the guy that remembers the most random stuff all the time. Eugene Monroe.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Yeah.
Trey the other day, well, the first podcast we did was with me, and he's like, hey, Jags draft picks piss you off? And I'm like, I don't know, not really.
No.
Well, I was like saying, they did, obviously, and I was naming them, and he's like, what about Eugene Monroe? I'm like, Jesus Christ. That's like a 2009 first-round draft pick, like, offensive lineman. How do you just remember that?
Yeah.
Just random shit.
Yeah, that's random.
Yeah. All right. So, it looks like it's 2-1 heading into the Patriots round.
Oh, gosh.
I think I got the edge on this one.
I know, you could.
Yeah.
Theo can unsuccessfully trump the Trey here. All right. That's the same, and it's the same premise, basically. Name Patriots players in the Hall of Fame until somebody gives up.
Tom Brady.
He's not in the
Okay.
You lost.
No, we're not taking that. He's obviously gonna be
Yeah,
there.
but he's not in it.
No, we're not. We're not. I'm not accepting that. Nope.
What do you mean, nope? He's not in the Hall of Fame.
It's Tom Brady. Like, come on, give me that one.
No, I'm not. You lost.
That's fucking bullshit.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I don't think I probably couldn't have named more than like one or two. So
You literally gave Theo a free. He said.
I was gonna say Aaron Hernandez, but no.
There you go.
Is that too soon?
That's
too soon.
Nah. Did you watch the Tom Brady roast? They're all over that.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. That was amazing, and I don't know why he signed up for that.
Yeah. No. All right, it's all of a sudden tied up 2-2. The Patriots have been to 15 AFC Championship games against 10 different starting quarterbacks. Name them.
Joe Flacco.
Correct.
NFC Championship games.
5, 4.
Wait.
Huh? 3, 2.
Russell Wilson. I don't know.
Oh man.
You know, an obscure one would be Andrew Luck, actually.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
So here's I listed a lot of them. So Dan Marino would have been an acceptable answer. 86.
Yeah.
Mark Brunell
Would have been an acceptable. Blake Bortles
would have been an acceptable
Yeah.
answer. David Garrard
would have been
an
an
acceptable answer.
Wow. It's a throwback.
Yeah. Tommy Maddox for the Steelers.
Would have been an acceptable answer.
And you decided to pick Russell Wilson, Theo Lawson.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I just I was under the gun there. Last couple seconds, I just figured naming one quarterback would be better than naming no one.
So, Theo, unfortunately, you're going to go, without a doubt, into podcast unroyalty because Trey has, without even answering the last question, successfully trumped you. You have not trumped the Trey. But let's do the last one just for fun. Name Patriots stat leaders. And Theo, I'm going to start with you. Passing.
Tom Brady.
Yeah. All right, Trey, rushing.
Corey Dillon.
No. You got a second guess?
Corey Dillon's really the only.
I thought you were saying Corey Dillon.
That's the only running back that was like.
No. Yeah, I don't think you would get any of these. Receiving.
I can't even think of any Patriots running backs. I mean,
Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis?
That's
not who it is,
Lawrence
though.
Maroney.
No.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
It's Sam Cunningham.
Danny Woodhead. Like,
Sam Cunningham.
I don't even know who that is. No.
Receiving?
Stanley Morgan.
Yeah!
Yeah.
Wow! That is who that is.
Yeah.
Good.
nice pull.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Good pull. What about tackles?
Ooh, boy. Teddy Bruschi.
No, this is more modern.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, Jamin says he'd allow Tom Brady.
Yeah, no.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
He's not in the Hall of Fame, though. But okay,
right.
tackles.
So you have Teddy Bruschi and...
More modern.
Like, how modern are we talking? Like, within the last 10 years, or...
Last 5.
Matthew Judon?
No. What? Come on.
I'm thinking the last 5, Hightower.
Devin McCourt.
Oh, well, yeah.
What about interceptions leader?
Ty Law.
No.
Rodney Harrison.
Raymond Claymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't have got... I don't know who that is.
Points leader?
Points.
Yeah.
Moss.
Steven Gostkowski.
Oh, yeah.
Jerry Rice has scored the most points for the 49ers, though. All right. Well...
I got out of there with the dub.
You did.
There you go.
I got.
I know you're 2-3 in your own game. I was really hoping Theo was gonna trump you, so you never won your own game.
Yeah, I clearly need to brush up on my Niners knowledge. So
I know. I thought that was gonna be a good topic for you, but if we did Golden State Warriors, Trey wouldn't have known anything. So just
yeah. I think I'm a little bit better with modern Warriors. I'm pretty good with the Giants, but yeah, my Niners history clearly isn't up to par. So
well, I went to your Facebook actually to try and see your likes to see if maybe you and Trey had some common, even television likes or anything like that, music, and my favorite thing was in your books category. It just says I don't read.
I can relate to that too.
I said I don't read in my category on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah. To be honest, I rarely go on Facebook anymore, and I probably updated that last in like 2009. So.
And you're a journalist
but
now,
I still don't read a ton. I read sports stories and features, but I've got a bookshelf here I do have books at my apartment, and my girlfriend has been coming over to borrow my Harry Potter collection. I think she's almost done with it. So she's read more of my books than I have in the last month. So.
Hey, well, I don't read any books either, my friend. So.
I read I do audiobooks. A good book is NFL Confidential by Johnny Anonymous, but really his name is David Molk. He played for the Eagles in 2014.
Well, that's not a very good alias if everyone knows his name.
Yeah, he didn't even try to. I mean, he went by Johnny Anonymous, but he didn't really went through that much effort to try to hide his identity. So.
All right. Well, Theo, you did a good 90 minutes with us, man. We really appreciate your time. Thank you for stopping on to the podcast. Do you want to plug anything for the 3 people listening to this podcast right now?
Let's see. Not really. I mean, Twitter handle I think is at Theo Lawson _SR. I think that's what it is. And anything else? Nope. Spokesman.com for my stories, I guess. But that's about it.
Do you have any family members that are in police work, because of the last name Lawson? I think is pretty, affiliated with like law enforcement and stuff.
Just because of law?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we do, but it was pretty funny. My brother and I played high school tennis together, and before the matches, they would introduce all of the players on either team, and so we would come up with some funny nicknames, and I think it was maybe my nickname. It might have been his, but it was Theo makes the law Lawson. It was the corniest thing ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the only play on my last name that I've ever come up with. I don't even know if I came up with that, but yeah, I don't think we have any law enforcement in our family.
Well, perfect, Theo. Thanks again, man, for really giving us a great interview.
Yeah.
I think you're in line for our personal guest of the year, maybe. We'll let Renee down soft, but
yeah.
But again, thanks again, man, for tuning in. Thank you guys for tuning in to another edition of the Raw Interview. Follow me on Twitter at Troop Talks. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Troop Talks. I'm blowing that shit up right now.
Yeah.
I'm uploading a lot of content, just stuff that I want to do, and subscribe to my YouTube, Troop Talks, Trey.
Yeah, subscribe to Treeb Talks. We appreciate you guys for watching this early. I appreciate Treeb for all the work he's putting into the YouTube channel, definitely to get us grow. If you guys happen to watch this interview, I am doing another podcast on Shane Gayu 11 YouTube channel at about 10:30 Pacific time. If you want to check that out, if you're into Madden and college football, that's what we're going to be discussing. But other than that, we appreciate you guys for checking us out, and we'll see you next week, hopefully, with another guest. Peace.
Thank you, guys.